All right, everyone. Very luckily joined this week by former UFC heavyweight, former Fury FC heavyweight champion, and next weekend's PFL alternate, Juan Adams. Juan, appreciate you coming on, man. Really appreciate you coming on. And first question, man, I want to get straight into it. Is obviously things maybe didn't go all your way in the UFC, but your run post UFC has been truly amazing to watch. You've won 4 out of your last 5, won the Fury FC heavyweight title, as well as being picked up by the PFL for next weekend's as an alternate for next weekend's tournament. How proud of yourself are you for making the turnaround and continuing to go from strength to strength away from the UFC?
I'm very proud of myself and very accomplished. There's it's hard because you reach the pinnacle and you have all these high expectations, and then you have to kind of deal with, life kind of crushing those dreams for you for a little bit, and then you're presented with the option, you give up or you keep going. And, right after I got released from the UFC, or they chose not to re-sign me, COVID hit. And I was signed with Aries. It looked like a great opportunity, but we couldn't get fights because of COVID. So at that point, I had to choose, all right, do I hold out for another big payday, or do I take fights that can make happen right now and take anyone that comes? And so I went with the other option because, it was more growth for me. I wanted to get back in the cage. I wanted to get my losses behind me, and I wanted to just keep working. And that's what Fury allowed me to do. And then it got to a point where, okay, I lost that fight. I lost the title, but then I could have chosen to give up there. I bounced back, won my next fight, and then you're presented with another option. Do I take this PFL alternate position, or do I stay with Fury? I've got 2 fights left on contract. Eventually, they'll have to give me a rematch for the belt. But, it was one of those things where I had to get the guaranteed money, and keep going and put myself in that pool of fighters to possibly get in the PFL tournament. Mm-hmm. So it was it's a lot of choices, and you can get, paralyzed by the options at times, but my thing was I just kept going, and that's one thing I hope people can take from my journeys. There's always times when your plans don't flesh out. You can either give up and be defined by your failures, or, make the most of new opportunities, and you can define your own success.
Yeah, for sure. So that somewhat leads into our next question, Juan, which is you've been slated as an alternate for the next Saturday PFL event. What is the process like being an alternate? And if you were to win, is there any guarantee of a full-time contract, do you think?
Not necessarily. So the process of being an alternate, they fly you out there, you make weight, you get a set amount of money, and if something happens and you get the call, then you're on a one fight contract. If you perform well enough, then you can get into the tournament, right? So for me, it's one of those things where I just have to hope that I had to make sure I was prepared for the opportunity, one, that I could make weight in the time given. And they actually offered me an alternate spot last time. What was it? Might have been May 20th, or it was sometime in May. I was offered the same opportunity, but I had signed to fight someone in Fury in June. And so I had to turn it down because, being consistent with, my word and my contractual obligations meant a lot to me. And anyway, the Fury fight falls through and this opportunity comes back around. So I get Fury to allow me to do this. But the process of being an alternate is they have a set number of alternates. So for those guys to fight, whatever number you're in, that's how many people have to pull out for you to get an opportunity. And if you get a finish, or you meet the criteria to enter into the next season, then you meet the criteria to get entered into the tournament, then you become a tournament option, right? So as far as I know, I'm the prime alternate. So if somebody falls out, I get first rights of a fight. And I win that fight impressively, I could get into the tournament. So a lot of things have to fall into place for me to get presented with that opportunity. But I had to be ready and able to accept the first opportunity that was given, right? So without my readiness to accept that first option, none of the other stuff is possible to begin with.
Yeah, 100%. Look, Juan, we know you started your MMA career quite late. A lot later than normal people would start their career. In your experience, what was the toughest aspect of MMA to learn? Basically from scratch.
For me, it was to get comfortable, getting hit. I think in our society, or even as like men, athletes, whatever, high level athletes, even down to like people playing video games, you're always used to you want everything to be perfect, right? So I want to go in there, I want to not get touched, And so learning that distance and everything, yeah, that was hard. But the hardest thing for me was learning that you don't have to take every hit as a failure, right? So you're going to be in the pocket, you're going to exchange, you have to get comfortable knowing yes, you are going to get hit. That is what the fight game is. But it doesn't mean it's necessarily a bad thing every time, as long as you're hitting them more than they're hitting you.
Yeah,
100%.
For sure. So, look, Juan, I'm really interested to know, where does the nickname the Kraken come from? Is that something that you've come up with yourself, or is there a bit of a story behind that?
So there's a couple of stories behind that. One, I love rum. So
the Kraken rum. Yeah, me too.
In college, that was all I drank. And then even after I graduated, when I was running nightclubs, at the end of shift or whatever, we would get drinks. And the guy that actually got me into fighting, my big brother Dallas, he's a really big H.P. Lovecraft fan. And he's really big into a lot of different mythologies. And he just saw me drinking it one day, and he goes, "Dude, that's what it's the Kraken. That's got to be your nickname." Giant, massive guy, and rolling with you is just, you're constantly drowning. Every time you think you're out, something else comes and grabs you. So just the size, me drinking the rum and everything, that's what led to the nickname. And everyone that's heard it is I see it. So
that's awesome. I'm a fan of the Kraken too, so don't worry.
Yeah.
One of the benefits of being in the heavyweight division is you can position yourself close to the top with a few really good wins. You've talked about how you've gotten to the UFC quickly and before, and believe you could do it again. Do you see your career ultimately ending back up in the UFC, or could you see yourself solidifying your career in possibly another organization like Bellator or One, and with PFL?
The thing is, I fought the one champion in my second fight in the UFC. If you look at the numbers, I feel I won that fight. The people watching the fight felt like I won the fight. But for some reason or other, the judges gave him the decision, and then he goes on and becomes the one champion. So I know I'm right there.
Yeah.
Right? Gotten so much better since then. I would like to go back to the UFC one day, but it's one of those things that's not really central to my success. The reason I want to go back is it's completely ego motivated. It's the only thing I've ever done in my life where I wasn't successful, So I want to go and I want to right that wrong. I was 1-3 in the UFC. I would like to go back and at least have the opportunity to finish 4-3, so I can, say I went out on a win.
Of course.
But my goal is to be one of the top, to be recognized and acknowledged as one of the top heavyweights in the world, right? So my goal is I want to be in that top 10. I know I'm not going to go down as the greatest of all time, but I want to be up there. I want to be in that conversation. So I have to approach everything with that goal in mind, and that's why I work as hard as I do. But, I've kind of started putting things in place for my goals outside of fighting also. So it's not that I'm 1 foot in, 1 foot out. It's everything I do within fighting has to align with the goals I set outside of fighting, the person that I want to be, with the life that I want to live. So I want to ultimately start a school, and to do that, I need money. So right now my goal is to make as much money as I can out of the fight game. And if that takes me back to the UFC, or I get to a point where I've established myself financially to where I want to be, and I can just take fights that I want to take. Ultimately, yeah, I want to go back to the UFC and I want to even that record out.
Yeah, for sure. So, look, Juan, particularly at heavyweight, there isn't a huge pool of elite wrestlers close to your credentialed level compared to other divisions. Do you feel that your superiority in the wrestling allows you to mix it up more when you're in the cage in a division where it's mostly strikers?
Yeah, I do, and it's why I'm willing to take more risks on my feet than otherwise. You know, obviously, if a perfect opportunity for a takedown presents itself, I always take it because I know I'm going to end the fight there. But I don't force it as much as I used to. So yeah, I'm willing to stand in there. I'm willing to trade with people more. I'm willing to, you know, throw risky kicks and play on the outside a little because I know they're not taking me down. So I go in there, and so yeah, that's my game plan all the time. Like I want to see how far I've come on my feet every time in there. Now, obviously, if a guy's like got that one punch power, which pretty much everyone does at heavyweight, you're a little more cautious. But I'm still very, I take a lot of risks that I probably shouldn't in the cage, but that's the name of the game. You know, you take a risk by
100%, man. Well, look, Juan, you train at Jackson Wink MMA, which is, you know, one of the great gyms in the world. It's obviously a standout gym in the mixed martial arts scene. While there are amazing gyms, you know, all over the world to choose from, TriStar, ATT, AKA, what makes Jackson Wink the best fit for you, do you think, as a mixed martial artist?
Well, for me, it makes the best fit as a martial artist because it's got the live-in facilities, right? So you're automatically immersing yourself in a way to the lifestyle.
Yep.
The other thing that makes it so great is the altitude out here, right? The weather doesn't change a whole lot. And on top of that, there's really not a whole lot to do out here. So if you're not really all about fighting, you're not going to last here very long. And the other thing is that it's just got so many elite level training partners. You know, we've got Davion Franklin, who's a top 10 in Bellator. We've got Dontel Mays, who's in the UFC. We have, and then in addition to that, the 185s and 205ers that we have here are next level also. So there's always training partners, and there's so many different people from so many different areas that have expertise in so many different variations of different aspects of the game. You can always learn something. And even our coaches are very diverse and, you know, very well known. And then on top of that, you know, I get to interact every day with people that have been where I'm trying to go.
Yep.
At the same time, I'm at people that are at the same part as me. And then I've got people gunning for me in the back. You know, there's a lot of newer heavyweights that'll come in here. And I don't view myself as a big deal or a star or anything. But to them, you know, in a way, yeah, they're happy to be my teammate and learn from me. But they're also trying to get to where I'm trying to go and trying to get to where I've already been. So that's extra fuel right there.
Yeah, it's basically those fresh white belts hunting the new blue belt. So look, one final question from us, and one thing that we like to do at From the Stands MMA is kind of bring some attention to the more human aspect of fighters. And you've kind of touched on it a little bit, which is you want to start your own school. But away from fighting, what are some of your hobbies and interests that you would like to pursue, maybe during your fight career, and more importantly, when your fight career is eventually over?
Yeah, so it's always been important for me to work with kids, right? And to help people. It's very central to who I am as a person. So in the time that I took away from fighting in that year and a half, I worked at 3 different homes for juvenile behavioral health. And now I am a teacher out here. I taught 9th grade science this year. I'll be teaching 7th grade next year. And it's a charter school for at-risk youth. We fight for equity in education.
Yeah.
So that's something that's really important to me. And another thing that I've always wanted to do is I wanted to go back and, you know, get another 2 or 3 degrees before I decide on a master's and pursue PhD stuff. My initial degree is in computer science. My minor was in exercise science, but I've always been interested in psychology. I've always been interested in philosophy as well. So that's 2 things I would like to go back and actually study and get credentialed in to better fuel my goals of the type of school that I want to open, the type of environment and the space that I want to create for children that might not necessarily get that at home. And outside of that, man, I like anime. I love reading. I love spirituality. I love studying different religions and things like that, just from the philosophy aspect of it. And I mean, I like hiking and stuff like that. Sports, huge sports guy. I love football. I love watching football. I love watching basketball, baseball to an extent. Even soccer sometimes. It's not really my cup of tea all the time. I don't have just 3 hours to be chilling.
Yeah.
But so philosophy, psychology, religions, mythology, huge Disney guy. I love kids movies and musicals. So
Yeah.
that's just stuff that I'm into.
No,
Awesome,
for sure.
man.
Well, look, Juan, thank you very much for joining us today. We really appreciate your time. It sounds like you've got some massive goals that you want to achieve, both in your fight career and outside of the cage, which is always good to see. So, Juan, thank you very much for joining us today, and we'd love to have you on again in future.
For sure, man. I love to. Thank you.
Easy. All right.
Awesome.
Thanks, man.
Juan.